last night I was going through basically articles to prepare for content for today. And one of the articles I read was about AI and how it's, going to completely disrupt a lot of different industry. And Jamie Dimon basically mentioned in it that one of the pros was going to be that the next generation will only have to work three and a half days per week. And so as I was kind of building out this concept of what I wanted to create, I called Jerry, who is the person I reach out to when I need to know anything in depth, micro or macro. He's the guy. And the conversation was so interesting, me just asking him these questions, that I thought, you know what, let's put him on camera, give you guys everything that I got last night, which happens to be one of the most valuable assets in my life. I am surrounded by incredibly smart people, and so I want to give you access to what I get to experience on a day-to-day basis. So how we're going to start. 1, are you concerned at all about just the speed in which technology is improving and ultimately the capabilities that AI has to, change our life?
That's a hard question. Am I concerned at all? Yeah, I think you, to some degree, have to be, right? Especially when you start talking about something like AI. Of course, there's all the conspiracy theories out there and everything, but even in the same interview that you were talking about with Jamie Dimon, he highlighted one of the, I think, very big, very valid concerns, and that is AI in the hands of bad actors.
Right.
And the pace that it is going at, that does represent a very real threat that, a lot of smart people are working real hard on trying to figure out how do you prepare for that and how do you build, guardrails around it. But we don't have all those answers yet. And so that's, something that I think we need to be concerned about.
Okay, so one of the questions I asked you last night was around kind of the deflationary aspect of not just tech, but really AI's opportunity to really speed that up. Before we go into that though, will you kind of go over the concept on why I don't know if it's the Fed outlook, maybe that's the accurate way to say it, but why we try to target a limited and controlled amount of inflation, and ultimately the idea that stimulates the economy. Can we run through that first?
Yeah, so that could become a very long conversation. The short version of it is systemic deflation has some pretty negative attributes to it in terms of managing an economy. So you think about the sort of in simple terms, if everything's going to cost less tomorrow, why spend today? And so there's some benefits to saving that can be a good thing, but taken to an extreme, it starts to become a downward spiral when people decide to slow down their spending, and that results in lower sales for companies, results in layoffs, results in lower spending, and the cycle goes down and you end up in a depression. And certainly that was the situation we saw in the Great Depression, and that was kind of a significant event that informed current policy. And so one of the things that we want to try and avoid is that deflation, depression, sort of self-reinforcing bad cycle. So one of the things that we try to do to prevent that is have a modest amount of inflation that gives us a little bit of buffer, a little bit of time to respond when things start looking like they're heading that direction. It gives policymakers like the Fed and Congress just a little bit of time to respond to prevent that. So that's one of the benefits. A second benefit is it gives people, both policymakers and individuals, time to adjust. And so when we go into something like a recession, or worse, if it's heading down the deflation sort of cycle, companies don't have a lot of alternative, individuals don't have a lot of alternative other than go through major restructurings in their operations and or their lifestyle, and typically layoffs and massive job losses are a consequence of that. A small amount of inflation gives employers the ability to do what we saw happen in the last, really for the last 20 years, and that is just wait. That little bit of inflation makes it to where some of those imbalances that come as the economy is going through its growth mode can be worked out without significant layoffs and other things that can have more negative impact on the economy. So there's a little bit of buffer that gives us in terms of dealing with situations that is a good thing.
Okay, so now moving into the conversation we had last night, that if AI has the potential to be deflationary, what do we do to combat that? As Jamie Dimon kind of referenced, well, yeah, but it'll be good because we'll be able to be more productive with less amount of time spent on, just human hours in, let's say, the office. But let's say for the workforce, if their time in goes down to 3.5 days per week, does that mean their income would have to significantly increase to combat the deflationary aspect of AI, which has the potential of bringing us into, I guess, a depression if not combated right?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's, first of all, starting off with the big if there, if it's deflationary. And I do think that's a reasonable assumption when there are a few factors that tend to be significant drivers of deflationary pressure in the U.S. and globally. And one of them is significant improvements in productivity. Everything else held constant. We're producing more goods for the same amount of work, for the same amount of income. Companies tend to lower their prices to stimulate demand. And so that's a significant factor. Cost of labor is a significant factor. When we had, or cost inputs in general, but labor being a significant cost input. When we had the significant globalization trend of the last, I don't even know how long, 25, 30 years, that's been significantly deflationary here in the US when we were going through 2007, 2008. And there was the conversation about should we be cutting interest rates to zero to combat deflation. The benefits of cheap labor overseas was one of the significant drivers there. So technology generating productivity improvements, cost of labor, two major factors. I think AI has the potential to be one of those drivers of productivity improvement. And so AI itself is not directly a driver of deflation, but through that, if that proves to be true, that AI makes us relatively more productive for every hour of work that we do, and we do the same amount of hours of work, we're producing more stuff, that tends to be create a deflationary pressure. So that, I think, is a reasonable assumption. As far as how do you combat that, that's a complex question because we talked about sort of painting with a very broad stroke, deflation is bad. That's not 100% true. So there's parts of the economy where we've seen deflation for a very long time. Most technology has been historically deflationary. You think about what was the cost of a computer 5 years ago, and what did you get for that versus what does that same budget get you today? It's the cost of stuff tends to go down in the tech market. And that's a good thing. We like that. But when that goes across the entire economy, that's where we start getting into a problem. And so, and the same thing on the inflation side. The Fed doesn't combat every pocket of inflation, and so you hear people talk about, or deflation. So you hear people talk about, oh, these CPI numbers are wrong because look at the cost of gas or look at the cost of food. Well, we're not going to combat every single thing. It's looking at in aggregate in general, what's the price level doing. So that's the kind of deflation that we want to try and prevent. So I think AI will generate deflation in some areas. When it comes to the broader market, I think the potential is there.
Well, yeah, just as you're saying that, actually, you may be going in this direction, but doesn't AI have the possibility of being deflationary in so many different categories across the spectrum that concern that we see actually might be at play?
Potentially. And
because you're talking about a potential disruptive in what? Is there an industry that it won't be disrupted in?
We just don't know.
Right.
Yeah, we just don't know yet. I mean, when it comes to, there's a lot of hype out there as far as what AI can and potentially do. There was a lot of hype about the internet too. Okay, and that was another case of a massive disruption that you go back to 1998, 1999, and that's kind of where we are with AI right now in terms of a whole lot of hope, starry-eyed, it's going to change everything. And the internet really did. I mean, to some degree, it lived up to the hype, just not as fast as anyone expected it to. And so, you think about Amazon and the disruption that's had on retail. Well, how much does that affect everyone's daily life? Well, certainly if you were displaced from a job, that affected your life. But for everybody else, okay, so you get the stuff you want, stuff you maybe couldn't get before, and you get it on your doorstep the next day, and it's probably cheaper than for those people who could get it, it's cheaper than what it used to be. In general, those are good things, and so you get some good and some bad that you kind of have to balance out over time. The good thing is that when those kinds of changes happen gradually, we adjust. People find new jobs, maybe better jobs. Certainly there's exceptions, and I don't want to downplay that, but in general, society benefits from that kind of stuff. And AI probably follows a similar path. I mean, when you look at what the potential is, I think there are certain areas that it's going to be very disruptive very quickly, and most areas it will kind of bleed in gradually while we all kind of figure out what is it, how do we fit this into our lives, what do we do with it. And in general, I think that the trend is likely to be improvement rather than loss. Having said that, we just don't know. I mean, so at the moment, that's all forward-looking. And if it happens gradually, like the internet did, I think that that's a reasonable assumption that it will be net a significant improvement. If it happens too quickly, then too many people are displaced too quickly, and that becomes a problem. And of course, that's a problem that policymakers have to try and address and prepare for.
Right. Okay, last question. If you were, let's say we can go back in time, but no, actually, let's say it this way. Let's say you were going into college now, and you were trying to figure out what you were going to major in, what you were going to do in the workforce. And knowing that AI has a potential of changing stuff up, where would you go? Like, what could you tell a kid who's in college today on how you should be looking at the skills that you're going to learn and develop to then apply to the workforce, knowing that AI might take some of those options off the playing field?
Yeah, great question. It reminds me, I think it was yesterday, I saw a comic that said, 10 years ago, they were telling us all go learn how to code. Now we have AI, great, as if that, coding is no longer relevant. To some degree, that's true. If you're a mediocre coder, then, congratulations, you're going to be replaced most likely. Having said that, there is always value to a human being that knows what the technology is doing, okay, or how it does it, or how to audit it, improve on it, check for flaws, So I think everything we currently do, there's still going to be value there. It's just going to be potentially reduce the number of those people that are needed. And so if you're exceptional at it or have the potential to be exceptional at anything, do what you want to do. For average, people who are mediocre students who are going to college trying to figure out what they want to do, it's a good question. I don't have a great answer for that. I don't think that there's a clear pathway yet on where AI goes that makes an easy answer for that. But in general, limitations we know about AI. It has no common sense at all. Okay, so it processes information. It will do it very systematically and very quickly. That's a very strong point for it. But there's no wisdom behind it. So it can generate an answer to a question, but if you ask it the wrong question, the answer might take you down a very bad path. So developing well, that's kind of the point of a liberal arts education, right? Studying philosophy, history, all of those things, studying literature, developing a worldview and some aspect of wisdom that can help you learn those right questions to answer and kind of guide AI through that process. There's going to be immense value to something like that. In terms of how you pair that with practical application, that's always the challenge. And so picking an industry that you are interested in and learning how to fill the gaps that AI leaves will be how people find opportunity to add value and generate high income for themselves.
Let's say that AI will be deflationary. And let's say that we have to find a way to combat that so it doesn't take us down the path of a depression. And in theory, one way could be raising everybody's income significantly. So you're getting paid more to work less. If that is an option to combat deflation, how would that work? Are companies going to choose to do that, or how do we get there?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there. So, okay, so let's... First thought is, of course they won't. If companies are able to generate more product with less labor input, are they just going to turn around and go, hey, good news, everybody, here's some more money? No, they're going to try and deliver added value to their shareholders. That's what they're actually responsible for doing. So, it's going to be a reasonable assumption that that will tend to be what they do. Next question is, will competitive pressure force them to? And so, you take a look at what we've been going through in the COVID and post-COVID era here, where just lack of available employees is driving wages higher, even where government maybe hasn't stepped in directly yet. So companies, in order to attract talent, have to offer either more compensation, easier work weeks, or whatever they have to do to try and attract people to come work for them. So that's certainly a possibility. If you go with the assumption that AI is displacing people, then maybe there's more people looking for work than there are positions open. So maybe competitive pressure doesn't cause that. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Ideally, competitive pressure is what causes it. When it doesn't, well, that's where government policy comes in. And so you get minimum wage laws and other redistribution of wealth type of activities that try and address that. I say ideally competitive pressure drives it because that's painful, but it works reasonably efficiently. When government starts to get involved and starts doing policy changes, that creates winners and losers, and it can be very disruptive and have a lot of unintended consequence. So hopefully it doesn't go that direction, but that's a sort of the fail-safe that keeps it from, hopefully, should keep that from going too far if companies don't do so willingly.
With all that said, we'll wait and see.
Yep.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button. If you want future content showing up on your feed, subscribe to the channel. If If you have any additional questions that you want Jerry to answer, this is a wealth of information here. Leave the comment below. We'll address it in another video. Hope you guys are having a phenomenal week. We'll see you next week.